The United States gave $60 million for food, and it's a shame because nobody, I don't see the results of it. And we gave it to people that, in theory, are watching over it fairly closely. We wanted Israel to watch over it. Part of the problem is Hamas is taking the money and they're taking the food. Nobody said thank you, but I didn't need the thank you. I just wanted the people to get fed.
So that was President Trump talking about the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Now, Trump, he does want peace in the Middle East, and he wants Hamas to make a deal now. Talks between Israel and Hamas are fractured, leaving the U.S. and Israel to figure out another solution here to rescue the remaining hostages. And if that wasn't bad enough, the IDF chief has canceled his planned trip to the U.S. over these negotiations. So for more on this, we're joined now by the former spokesperson for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Tal Heinrich. Great to have you here, Tal. This has been going on now for 2 years, and the people of Gaza are clearly starving. President Trump has acknowledged that. He wants to get some help in there. He's trying to do all he can. But what does this have? How does this play out with Israel and Hamas and sort of the situation there? I mean, he's giving aid down to Gaza, but does that hinder the plan of what Israel trying to take out Hamas?
It's my pleasure to be joining you this morning, John. You see, we were unfortunately actually starting to get closer to a hostage release deal in exchange for a 60-day ceasefire in Gaza, according to official accounts. And then Hamas started feeling emboldened by certain measures taken by what I call Western useful idiots, for example, like the intention by some global leaders to recognize a Palestinian state. And also, their propaganda machine is working, and those lies keep being spread by international media outlets and so forth, and influencers online. I'm not saying that there's no hunger in Gaza. Of course, the Palestinians are suffering, but that is on Hamas. The fact of the matter is that Israel and the United States have done a lot since the beginning of this war that we didn't start to facilitate the entry of more than 2 million tons of aid into Gaza. The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, a great American initiative by this administration, has distributed to date more than 100 million meals in Gaza. But Hamas, from day one of this war, they want to orchestrate a humanitarian crisis, and exacerbated by propaganda. Now, that is their strategy. They want Israel to take the fire for their own actions.
Does that play into Hamas's hand by giving them the aid? I mean, to your point, is this not what they wanted?
Of course, that's exactly what they want. They want a recognition of a Palestinian state. And the fact of the matter is that October 7th didn't happen because they didn't have a state. It happened because they had one. In fact, they have two. You know, John, they have Gaza in control of Hamas, and they have, parts of the Judea and Samaria, what we call the West Bank, where the Palestinian Authority is in control. And these are two failing terror states.
Right.
Exactly. So by doing so, by giving Hamas exactly what they want, these global leaders, they're actually incentivizing their sick methods of war. What are they saying? They're telling Hamas, keep the hostages, keep torturing your own population by looting of their aid, by displacement, by using them as human shields and so forth.
Fair. Let me ask you this. U.S. Ambassador, we had to Israel, Mike Huckabee, on here in Newsmax, and this is what he had to say about the state of Hamas. I want to get your reaction on the other side.
And the reason that Hamas pulled away from all discussions is because they're watching the Europeans patting them on the back and giving them power and influence. That is not helpful, and it needs to stop. And the world needs to stand with Israel and say to Hamas, you're finished.
So you've got Canada now saying that they're going to recognize a Palestinian state. What's Israel's reaction to this? Seeing these other countries now say that they're okay having this, acknowledging them as a Palestinian state.
First, I would say that for them, it's two-state solution. You know, John, it's empty slogans. For us, it's our lives. These leaders, they think that they know better than the people of the region, what's best for the region, but in fact, they don't. We know exactly what they're doing. They're pandering to their Islamist, Israel hater constituencies back home. That's what they're doing. So for us, it's our lives. It's not just a game. And they're incentivizing what Hamas is doing to our hostages. I don't know if you watch these two horrible, terrifying videos of our hostages that were just released over the past 2 days by Hamas. That's what intentional starvation looks like. And these leaders are telling Hamas, well, you can keep the hostages because you can keep torturing your own people as well, because what for? You'll get exactly what you want. And a senior Hamas official, Razi Hamed, just over the past 24 hours, he said that the recognition of a Palestinian state by these countries is the fruits of October 7th. They're turning October 7th into the Palestinian Independence Day. And what these leaders don't understand, John, is the core of this conflict. The Palestinians, they don't want a state. They never wanted a state. They had 2 states, and they're failing. They're terrorist states. What they want is a state instead of Israel, not one next to Israel. So they're perpetuating the war. They're sentencing us to endless wars.
What do you think of President Trump wanting to get aid in there? Is that something that is looked at as, from Israel's perspective, is a good thing, knowing that President Trump he's acknowledged that these kids are starving? And to try to get some aid in there. How does Israel perceive that?
We want to get aid in there. A humanitarian crisis only benefits Hamas, or if it's a manufactured one or one exacerbated by international reports and fake AI images and so forth. But we don't want a humanitarian crisis over there. Of course not. Yeah. That only benefits Hamas. And if someone doesn't get that this is their play, that this is what they want, I mean, they're stupid. And if someone does understand that this is Hamas's play and still they put the pressure on Israel instead of on Hamas, then they're double stupid.
Yeah, that's a good point. What do you think happens next? And let's say the U.S. gets the aid in there and helps these kids that are starving. Where does this go? What's the next step? How do you see it playing out?
Well, I know what we want to see. I know what we want as a country, Israelis, what we want to see as an end goal in Gaza. And we said it from day one of this war. We want our hostages back. We want Hamas to be eliminated as a power in control of Gaza. They should have no territory. And we want a Gaza that would never, ever pose a terror threat to us. So after Hamas is eliminated, we want to see the demilitarization of the strip of land. And we need to see the de-radicalization of that society. And that might be a very long process in which other countries from the region, like Saudi Arabia, the UAE, may be involved because they have underwent certain processes of this kind of de-radicalization in their own societies. And we want this round to be the last round. You and I don't want to have this conversation again, right? Right.
And let me ask you this. Do you think the last of the hostages are going to be the hardest to get back? Because Hamas, they're not going to want to give them up if that's all the leverage they have, correct?
Of course, that's our biggest leverage throughout the war, our hostages and also the international public pressure. Now, it's important to say that it would be much easier to get our hostages back if the public pressure would be applied on Hamas instead of on Israel.
Interesting. Tal, thank you so much. We appreciate you coming on and shedding some light on this situation, and we'll continue to follow it throughout the week. Thank you so much, Tal Heinrich.
Thanks so much.